one. We're live.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Experience Series, where, of course, we talk to industry leaders about their personal journeys and the insights that can only be garnered through lived experience. The Experience Series is brought to you by The Hive and Hive Life magazine. Before we get started really quickly, I just want to talk a little bit about The Hive for those who are tuning in for the first time. The Hive is a network of flexible workspaces for businesses at every stage across Asia Pacific. Make sure to follow The Hive's Facebook page to be a part of all the buzz in our community. Once again, I am your host, Shailene, and today I will be speaking with Eleanor Carey, motivational speaker, entrepreneur, and author who draws parallels between the world of business and extreme outdoor adventure. Eleanor was the first Australian woman to row across the Pacific Ocean, which she accomplished as part of a crew of 3. They set not 1, but 2 world records for being the first crew of 3, male or female, to make the crossing, and the youngest crew of 3 to row any ocean in the world. So, I mean, damn, right? How are you, Eleanor? Thank you so much for coming on. How are you doing?
Hey, Shailene, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. It's super exciting to be here.
Absolutely. Like I was just, so obviously me and Eleanor were just chatting, and I was just saying that this is the first time I'm getting to speak to an adventure entrepreneur. So it's extremely exciting to be able to talk to someone who's made a career out of these amazing experiences that so few get to experience. So I'm very excited. For those watching, we will, as usual, be having a Q&A at the end of the interview portion of this episode. So please leave all your questions in the live stream comment section on the Experience Series Facebook page or in the Zoom chat room. So if you're ready, Eleanor, let's get right into it.
Yeah, let's do it. I'll answer anything. I'm an open book.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. So let's start from the beginning. Could you tell us a little bit about your life and your background before becoming an adventurer, an entrepreneur? Because obviously you were a physiotherapist, right? So tell us about that.
Yes. So I left school. Basically, I was a really well-behaved child. Like I followed every single rule that existed. I hated disappointing people, and I was really following the path that I thought that I'm supposed to follow. So I went to university. I really wanted to help people, so I chose physiotherapy. But I just ultimately found the career I found it frustrating. And I don't think I realized it at the time, but I did have these entrepreneurial traits. But my parents were teachers, and there weren't a lot of entrepreneurs around me when I was growing up, I guess. So I think it took me a long time to see that. So I wanted to help people, but I got frustrated within the system and within the limitations of how I could help people. And then that started to lead me towards some of the more adventurous things.
Right. So, I mean, it's quite a jump, obviously, from being a physiotherapist to accomplishing what you accomplished. So what was the final, did you have like a catalyst moment that was the final nail for you where you were like, okay, I can't do this anymore?
There were a lot of catalyst moments. So I don't know how long you've got for me on this question. But the one that really stands out was, so I'd done a couple of physio jobs in Australia, and then I moved over to the UK because I thought if I change all of my scenery, maybe I can solve the part of me that's a bit bored already. And I remember I was working over there and, walking into the hospital, this giant like brown concrete box, and was surrounded by the hordes of people that were all entering the building at the exact same moment for like 8 a.m. And I could just hear people around me going like, oh, it's Wednesday today, nearly Thursday. And then the next person would be like, oh, the next day it's like Thursday today, nearly Friday. And I just looked around going, why are we all here when everybody's just counting down to the weekend all the time? Yeah. Surely that has to be a sign that something is wrong, or surely there has to be more to life than this. And again, ticking these boxes of going, you should finish school, you should finish university, you should get a good job, and then getting to the end of that road and just going, this isn't satisfying, or this isn't fulfilling, or there has to be more. So that was really the beginning of the process, I guess, of going, nah, this can't be it. I was, 24 or something at the time going, this can't be the rest of my life. I refuse for this to be the rest of my life.
Yeah. So when you had these thoughts come to you, because I mean, yeah, that's very well put. People often do live waiting for the weekend. So that's really a good point. So when you did bring this up to the people who you're closest to and you were like, hey, listen, I want to go embark on my first big journey, which was, of course, cycling across Europe, 3,000 kilometers across Europe. What was the general thought process behind that? And also, how did your family feel about you making that decision?
Yeah, well, it took quite a while before I was verbalizing those kind of thoughts aloud, because I thought that somebody might commit me to some type of, mental asylum, which I think one of my sisters still wants to do and doesn't really understand the majority of my life choices. But in terms of, I guess, how that decision came about, I read a book called Cycling Home from Siberia. And I read it on Christmas Day because I didn't know anybody in England yet. So I read this book cover to cover, didn't put it down. And I just really had this feeling of like, I didn't know that you were allowed to do that. I didn't know you were allowed to fly halfway around the world and then go back somewhere by your own human power. But it took about a year between reading that book and then really letting it percolate and settle in. And I started following adventurers online, because I thought that you had to be like Bear Grylls or these really big, burly, strong dudes who are really emotionally stable. And I cry really easily. So I just thought, you're not the kind of person who can go on a big adventure. I'm ginger. I get sunburnt sitting under trees. Like, it's like oil and water, basically. So it took about a year. I booked a flight. I cried immediately after the confirmation email hit my inbox. But it took another couple of months really after I'd booked the flight to fly one way to Norway before I started telling people, because it took me quite a while to build up the confidence to be able to verbalize it, that was even a plan that I was contemplating.
Right. And so when you did tell them, were they just sort of like, okay, are you sure? Like, did you have people doubting you?
Oh, absolutely. They were like, you need to take a man with you. They're like, you're going to get murdered. You're going to get other, things. There was like a lot of, sort of threats, I guess, in a way of like, these are all of the bad things that are going to happen to you. And the most common one was always, you're going to get murdered. And it's just like, there's not actually axe wielding, chainsaw wielding murderers that are running around in like coastal Norway. That's actually not really a thing. So it's just crazy, the things that we associate, I think, with these big adventures that are actually, they're really so far from the mark of what it's actually about. And of course, there's some level of risk, but not any more so, I think, than a lot of the things that we do in day-to-day life. So yeah, there was a lot of pushback because I'd never done anything like that before. So it was just like, well, who are you to turn around and want to do something like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially the fear of the unknown, you're going to fill the blanks of the unknown with probably whatever we see in movies and stuff. But yeah, I mean, Norway, what a beautiful place to start, right? So so in your Hive Life magazine interview, you spoke about how terrified you were when you realized, like you just said, that you were going to be cycling 3,000 kilometers across Europe. So how did you fight through that fear when you actually got on this bike and you were like, all right, I'm going to kickstart this journey now? What was going through your mind?
I like cycled out of the doors of the airport. I rebuilt my bicycle under this staircase in the airport. It took me like half the day, so there was no light left anyway. I put the front wheel on back to front. So it was a shit show from the start, right? Like, I had no idea what I was doing. And I guess at the beginning, in that moment where I very first got on the bike, and for context, I'd never camped alone before. I'd never cycled more than maybe 15 or 20 kilometers before. There was really nothing that I had done that was, a statement to say that I would be successful, I suppose. And the way that I coached myself through it was telling myself that I could get out of it at any time. And I always had this in my head that if I get a day down the thing, or 3 days down the road, or 5 days down the road, and I hate it and it's the worst thing I've ever done, that I can always get a taxi back to the airport and I can always fly back. And I sort of just relied on the fact that, when I was like 95 years old in a nursing home, even if I only got 3 days down the road, or 4 days, or 5 days, it was still, 5 days further than I'd ever cycled before in my life. And I would at least find out if I was interested in doing something like that. So I think I reframed it as a win no matter what. And it was still more than I'd ever done before, even if I didn't get the full distance.
For sure. So how long did it take you again to do the whole trip?
That one was about 55 days. I had maybe a 4 or 5 days off in Hamburg in the middle. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I bet that was a fun break. I mean,
Oh, it was.
That's amazing. So obviously, before we delve right into your accomplishment of breaking world records, no big deal, could you tell us about your profession now? What's your approximate schedule look like? Obviously, Corona aside, what would your typical week look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wear a couple of different hats. I like the variety in my life. That definitely keeps me interested. I am a person who gets bored easily. So yeah, the variety is really something that that is essential to me, I've found. So part of my week, I'm the adventurer in residence for QUT, the Queensland University of Technology, which is in Brisbane. And so as part of my role there, it's with QUT Entrepreneurship. So it's helping the students and the staff as well figure out how to start businesses for the very first time. And so much of the mindset of, going out and into the world of adventure is very similar to the mindset that you need when it comes to starting a business. So for a couple of days of my week, spending it mentoring, we run events and programs and things like that. And then the rest of the time I do the motivational speaking, and I've got another business called Voxer. So we run micro adventures. So both for people who are solo trying to go out overnight camping for the very first time, and then also for teams and in a corporate setting, organizing these overnight micro adventures which are close and achievable and near to home for people, which is a really important thing, I think, during these COVID times as well. I let you say the word. I wasn't going to bring it up. But.
Yeah, no, I broke it. But no, I think, if you ever, when everything's over, please come to Hong Kong, because I think we would love to go on some adventures with you. That would be amazing.
I'll get on a plane like right now.
So how has your life changed since you decided to make extreme outdoor adventure such a foundational part of your life? Obviously, you spoke about how waiting for the weekend is day in, day out, same routine. And now you have a variety of different elements in your life. Is there anything else that you feel like has been a huge pivot since you made this career change?
Yeah, I think it's just the ability to, going on these big scale adventures, it really allows you to know yourself. And that's both for better and for worse as well, because, I found out a lot of things that I'm really terrible at along the way as well. But, that ability, I guess, to be able to know yourself and putting yourself in those environments and choosing, I think, to put yourself in those environments, I guess, when it's in your control. I think then when you're thrust into other unknown environments or circumstances that you didn't foresee coming, I think you've just really got a reserve then to be able to draw upon in those sort of present times, I guess, whatever that ends up looking like. So all of those things coming together, I guess, has helped me to, shape a career, shape a life that I enjoy so much more now, and that plays to my strengths instead of, some of the weaknesses that I was trying to perhaps strengthen before. So I guess some of those things have helped to get reset by the big adventures, and really just more than anything, I think, come home to center almost, as much as that maybe sounds like a little bit airy-fairy, but I think particularly if people are potentially looking at a career change or looking at a big shift in their life, I think so many of the answers already exist within. And I think often we go and search for all of these other cures and answers and go searching for things, which is what I did with the adventure. But to me, the adventure just allows you to see what's already inside. And if you can follow it, then I think you're really onto something.
For sure. Very well put. I think what you said earlier about how you were picturing if you're going to be 90 years old in a nursing home, you can look back on your life and be like, I tried that, that's actually something that I do as well, where I imagine myself as old and decrepit and just thinking am I proud of the way I've lived? So I think a lot of people can resonate with that, whether they've dreamed of doing what you've done or have done it. I think that's brilliant.
It's a really useful tool. And I think it's a great question to ask ourselves regularly in terms of, and a question that I ask, which is perhaps even a little more morbid again, it came from Steve Jobs' Stanford address, where he was waking up asking himself, if today was my last day, would I still be about to do what it is I'm going to do today? I find that question of today too scary and too immediate. So I think almost everybody can reframe that question to be a time frame that I think feels right. And to me, it's going, okay, if I wasn't going to be here in a year from today, am I happy with the progress that I've made? Am I happy with the decisions that I'm making, that I could die happily in a year from now? So that's sort of another metric, as well as the 90-year metric. But yeah, contemplating our mortality is a useful tool.
Yeah, if anything, it's pretty useful, but I'm going to use that a year from now. I'm going to take that from you. So thank you for that. All right. Okay. So now I want to jump straight into the Great Pacific Race. So what made you decide to undertake that journey across the Pacific Ocean? And could you actually let the audience know how long after your trip across Europe was this Great Pacific Race?
Yeah, sure. So I cycled across Europe in 2015. I finished that journey in, I think it was about July of 2015. And the decision to row across the ocean came about in January of 2018. So it was sort of 2.5 years later, 3 years later, something like that. And it came about, I should have realized by this point how suggestible I am. The first journey came about because of a book. The rowing came about because I watched this documentary called Losing Sight of Shore. I 100% recommend it. And it's about 4 British women who rowed the entire way across the Pacific Ocean. So they were at sea for like 9 months or 10 months. And I just looked at them and I thought, it looks like the most awful thing you could do and the most incredible thing you could do all at the same time. Yeah. So the period, I guess the latency period had significantly decreased. I learned my lesson from the first time, where I waited a year before I went on the cycling journey. This time, as soon as the credits rolled, I Googled ocean rowing crews, and I, fired off this email to the first crew that I found, asking if I could join them before I had before my brain had the chance basically to come up with all the excuses. Because if you give it time, it will find the excuses and the reasons not to. So you've got to trick it, right? Because it's too good sometimes. Yeah. And they emailed back and they actually said they'd rejected me. They said, oh, we'll put you on the reserve list, but it's probably not going to happen. And I actually completely forgot about it. I didn't believe that they were putting me on a reserve list. And then I got the call up just 6 weeks before the race was supposed to start, when their third crew member dropped out. So it was It was a whirlwind, absolutely last minute. And I think I was about the only person on earth who was willing to get in that boat at the last minute. So, they were kind of stuck with me. Yeah.
But also I bet pretty damn glad that you decided to take this risk anyway.
Well, yeah, it kind of worked out in the end. So, yeah. But yeah, it was a gamble on both sides, I guess you could say.
Right. And now, do you actually still keep in touch with those two?
Yeah, I do. I speak to Kaz very often. I speak to Meg as well. So yeah, Kaz and I, we're born on the same day, same year. So we're birthday buddies, and always get to have a birthday chat now, which is really nice. So, and much more frequently than that. But yeah, we are good friends.
So cool. See, that's why I do believe that some things are just meant to be,
they are. Well, we took that as a sign. We took it as a sign.
Yeah. You come across this documentary and then you're just all of a sudden, a few weeks later, you're like, oh, I'm setting a world record. Cool. That's amazing.
Wild.
Yeah, amazing. So obviously, as someone who's never rowed across an ocean myself, there are a few questions that I have for what that experience was like in terms of, what you saw and what you experienced. So could you tell us a few details about that experience, for anyone who hasn't done what you've done?
Yeah, of course. So, one of the biggest things I to get your head around in terms of ocean rowing is the size of the boat. So it's about 7 meters long. So, about 2 cars, if just a bit shorter than that. It's only 1.5 meters wide. So if you put your arms out, I can't put my arm out for this wall. It's about the width of your arm span, and the side of it's only 30 centimeters off the water. So you can imagine, as soon as you get a wave that's slightly bigger than 30 centimeters, that water is basically coming directly over the boat. So it's a really tiny, tiny boat to be in the ocean conditions, I guess, that we were in. But not only that, it's sharing a space that's that small with 2 other people that I didn't know very well. You go to the bathroom on a bucket on the deck, like a meter away from somebody else who's looking you in the eyes, basically, while they're rowing.
I'm not gonna lie, I wanted to ask you that question, but I was like, I'm just gonna let her See if she brings it up herself.
It's one of the most commonly asked questions, so I usually get it out because people say that they don't want to know, but really they do. And
We
I
do,
realize
yeah.
that right now.
So I appreciate that. No, yeah.
It was actually probably, apart from perhaps dying at sea, it was my biggest fear was actually going to the bathroom and just going like, I just don't know how to do this while looking at somebody, and it was a whole confronting thing in and of itself.
Yeah.
The rowing itself, in terms of like what did the day-to-day look like, so we rowed for 3 hours on and then 3 hours off, and then 3 hours on and 3 hours off, and that was 24 hours a day. So it was 2 3-hour rowing shifts even throughout the night, and we never had more than 3 hours off at a time. So just the full-on nature of rowing for that long, for me, I'd never rowed for, I rowed for a few months when I was at university, but it was more about the drinking than the rowing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it wasn't exactly serious.
Yeah.
And I'd never rowed for 3 hours straight in my life, let alone to be looking down the barrel of this journey. I've committed myself to this boat, and I've got to row for 3 hours and then have a break and then do another 3 hours. And it's this infinite, it feels infinite, the period of time that you're going to be out there. And it feels like it's never going to come to an end. Right. So it's, the size of the boat, the seasickness, the conditions, that's, I guess, a bit of a high level description of some of the aspects out there.
Yeah. So were there any points where you had to actually, if the waves were really big, did you literally never step off that boat the entire journey?
So when the waves, so we rode out of so we left Monterey Bay in California, and we rode directly out into a tropical storm. So I grew up in like country Queensland. I'd never seen massive ocean waves in my life. I had never had any ocean experience really at all. And all of a sudden I'm looking at these waves, which are the size of like 2-story buildings, some like even 3-story buildings. And you're in this tiny boat. It was insane. I won't lie, I cried pretty well nonstop, I think, for the first couple of days. And I cried the entire time that we rode through the night the first time, because it was so scary. Yeah. So I apologize. I got sidetracked along the way. I can't remember your original question, but I've gotten sidetracked by the
No, I was just wondering if you had, had to get off the boat when it was huge
that's
waves
right.
like that. Yeah.
So not when it was huge waves. So the waves would slam into us, and you would get knocked off your seat, like onto the side. So we were clipped on, but sometimes you would get hit by these massive waves, and then you're sort of like lying there on the deck, and you're a little bit sort of startled almost. The times when we did get off the boat, which was only twice for me the whole time, was when the conditions were really calm and we had to scrape the bottom of the boat, because it gets, it's not barnacles, but it's a little bit of sort of slime almost. And if you scrape that off, you can't see anything disappear, but it helps you to go a lot faster. So we would swim when the conditions were calm enough to scrape the bottom of the boat. So we would go faster. And that was the only time.
Wow. That's amazing. See, now I appreciate that detail, because that's really painting a picture right there. So amazing. Just a quick reminder to everyone who's tuning in on Facebook Live, please head over to the Experience series and drop any questions that you might want to ask Eleanor in our comment section of the live stream. Jumping straight back into it. So what was life like for you? Obviously, how long were you out there again for? It was like just over 62 days?
62 days, yeah. So just about 2 months.
So did you have a plan for, what you were going to do right at the end of that?
So at the time, it was something, I guess, that ultimately arose out of the cycling journey. And it was, I'd started a business. I opened the Generator Bundaberg, which was an innovation hub which is just north of Brisbane on the east coast of Australia. And so that business was still running while I was out at sea. I had a beautiful group of people that helped me keep that running while I was out at sea, while we didn't have internet and I was uncontactable. So I had a lot of guilt, I guess, for stepping away from that, and was pretty well back into work there within a couple of weeks. So I think I had 2 weeks out in Hawaii, and then I was pretty well back into it when I got back. So yeah, it was kind of just back into regular life, but with a whole lot of new perspective, I guess, that I gained out there at sea. And one of the big insights that I got was, that it was actually time to move on from that business. So it took maybe a couple of months after I'd gotten home I decided to sell it, which was a really difficult decision to make because it was my first ever business. It was really my baby. I had a huge connection to it. So that was a big realization that I had at sea, that it was time to move on to the next thing, and that it could still have a life and carry on, I guess, afterwards. Wow.
So, I mean, when you did come back from the Great Pacific Race, did people start reaching out to you as soon as, it got out there what you guys had accomplished? Were there opportunities kind of rolling in terms of people being like, wow, you did this amazing thing, we want to hear from you? What were those opportunities and those sort of outreaches like?
Yeah, there was, various, interviews, podcasts, speaking opportunities and things like that. And, mixture between, free opportunities and, then sort of slowly turned into more sort of paid opportunities as well. But it was definitely, trying to chase for some of those things as well, and try to create some more buzz and some more opportunities, I guess, around that. But it is, I guess it is a big advantage, I guess, of having done something so obscure and so different, is that people are naturally quite interested in it. And it's a bizarre thing to do anywhere in the world. It's an even more obscure thing to have done in Australia. There's only a couple of people that have done it, whereas in the UK, there's quite a lot more ocean rowers. So I guess I had a little bit of an advantage there, I guess, career-wise, as to the nature of ocean rowing in Australia, which I didn't even do it for that reason in the first place, but it was a side benefit.
Yeah, I was going to say that, you described yourself as a kid who was very rule-abiding and quite, would you say you were reserved when you were younger?
Yeah, somewhat. I would was a bit of a joker perhaps once I got to know people well, but all in all, I think if you saw me at school or people who knew me at school, I was fairly just, fairly straight by the book. I was kind of just friends with everybody, didn't ever try to stick out too much, I guess.
Right. So, I mean, to go from someone who, you said that your sort of drive to become a physiotherapist was to sort of help people and stuff like that. And now, like, you're someone who has you seem like you have no issue with putting yourself out there. So it seems like, the fear that you sort of fought on those journeys, it transferred into a lot of other areas of your life. Would you say that it helped you sort of pursue those opportunities that maybe back then you wouldn't have even cared to have, like public speaking and stuff like that? Like, did it scare you before and now it doesn't because of those journeys?
It's such an interesting question, to think back on, on your life, I guess, and how you evolve as a person. Like, in many ways, I'm still so rule abiding that it almost frustrates me. Like, I think I'm a terrible entrepreneur, I think, in some ways, because I follow too many of the rules. And, there's the whole like move fast and break things, which I'm more probably a little bit slow and more considered, which I think also surprises people as well, given the adventure background, that I'm still, careful and slow and considered. And I'm actually not that gung-ho, although I put myself in the middle of the ocean with a relatively short period of time. So it's a little bit of a funny one to try and explain. But I suppose the risk-taking behavior, if you want to put it that way, of, putting yourself out there to do these journeys, it's taken a lot of purposeful effort. And to be totally honest, it's still taking a lot of effort to really make that translate across into my business life, I suppose. The adventure and the physical nature of risk-taking, I'm fairly okay with. But and although maybe I present as being confident, it still takes a lot of work and a lot of talking myself into being able to do those things, and have a lot of self-doubt and a lot of those kinds of things. But I think it's the ability to coach myself and talk myself out of it has perhaps improved. So it's not that I'm not without self-doubt or any of those things. They are definitely still there, but get a little bit better at talking myself through it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I've ever spoken or met anyone who embodies the fake it till you make it kind of, or like at least convince yourself that you can, even though you're like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, it's you, which is amazing. Very impressive. So my next question for you is, what are the I'm sure you've gotten this a lot, but I really need to cover it. What are the 3 biggest lessons that you learned from taking on those 2 extremely trialing endeavors?
So my 3 biggest lessons. So the first one is that is the recipe, I guess, for a clear mind to me has three key ingredients, and that is the outdoors, with movement, and disconnected from technology. And I guess those are the things that were, I guess, common between both the cycling journey and the rowing journey, although the rowing was a much more extreme disconnection from technology compared to what the cycling trip was, because I still had a phone and was semi-connected, I suppose. But those are the things, I guess, that I continually return to whenever I get overwhelmed, whenever I need to clear my own mind. And even if it's just getting out into the bush here, like, you know, half an hour away from where I live, that ability to utilize those three components together of outdoor plus movement plus disconnecting from technology is a tool that I will use for the rest of my life. So that's the first one. The second one is that the realization, which I think I'm still learning this lesson as well, is that nothing big happens all at once. And I think I used to have this perception, or, you know, you see people that have done incredible things. And I think we sometimes have a certain belief about them or about their journey or how things may have been, for example. And realizing that something as epic as rowing across an ocean and the amount of effort that it takes, it is just a combination of the most minuscule moments that are combined together. That every single one of those oar strokes was difficult, that it never got to a point where it felt easy, that it was a slog the entire time. So I guess that's the disappointing thing, is to realize that it's always hard, it's always effortful. Every time you level up, the level and the bar just raises again, and you have to continually keep meeting that bar, I think. Right. But it's also reassuring as well. Right. To say it's the little consistencies, and all I've got to do is just show up today. I need to do the best that I can today to do the single next oar stroke to contribute to whatever this bigger thing is of what I'm doing. So that would be the second one. And the third big lesson, which again I almost find sad and disappointing to realize, is that you'll just never feel ready to do certain things. And if we're waiting for that moment where you feel like you can do it, where you've got all the skills and all of the knowledge that you might need to accomplish a certain thing, that moment is likely never going to arrive, not until you've done the thing. Yeah. So you can never know how to row an ocean until you've been out and rowed an ocean, until you've gotten away from shore. You're basically floundering, or feel like you're floundering, I think, a lot of the time. So it's getting used to being in the unknown and getting used to the fact that you just don't feel ready. So it's a myth.
Very well put. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. This is why I, love doing. I think it's really cool to be able to talk to someone like you, who's obviously done something that I couldn't have imagined what it would be like to do. And hearing the lessons that you've learned from those experiences, it's very enlightening and very inspiring. So thank you for sharing those insights. So of course, with your business folkser, and obviously with being a mentor and stuff like that, what parallels do you often draw attention to between the business world and extreme outdoor adventure?
Yes, so I think one of the biggest ones, it's actually the one that I just touched on, which is it's the ability to step into the unknown. And I think this is something that I find really often in our work at the university as well, that people are always looking for something that's sure, something that's guaranteed. They're looking for a process, they're looking for a pattern in whatever that might be. But often the only thing that you can see is the very next step in front of you. And always, when you're building a new business and you're building it from scratch and you're doing something that you've never done before, it's that similar thing where every single moment you kind of feel out of control. Every single moment you're pushing yourself and you're doing things that you haven't done before. So I think there's so much of starting a business, founding a business for the very first time that feels exactly the same as undertaking a big adventure, because it is. It's just an adventure of a different sense, right?
For sure. Yeah. A little less physically grueling, but definitely jumping
as emotionally grueling, I would say. In starting my first business, there was just as many tears, I think, with that as there were in the ocean. So they're pretty similar places.
Yeah, for sure. Takes a big person to admit that they can cry about a lot of this stuff. So thanks for that.
So many tears.
Yeah, I bet. All right. So if you were to give any advice to those out there who might feel a little stagnant in their 9 to 5 office job, the way you did when you were walking into that big brown building, what would it be? Do you have any advice for people like that?
So I think number one is go into the outdoors, because nature has this ability to bring things out in you. There's a saying, it's by a guy, John Muir, which is, within every walk in nature, one receives far more than he seeks. And that is so true. And it has been, a magic pill for me basically every time. The answer has often not arrived as quickly as what I might like, but ultimately nature has always helped me realize the answers to some of those bigger questions. Right. And I think if people are feeling stagnant, sometimes one of the most difficult things is admitting that, because you know that once you start to think that, once you start to have those feelings, once you start to consider what else you might do, it is a little bit of a catalyst then that you maybe are going to have to do something about it. So I think sometimes people are quite resistant to even admitting that they're a little frustrated or a little stagnant. So look, admitting it is the first key, because you've got to do that if you want to move through to all of the other beautiful things that can be on the other side.
For sure. Yeah. I think people do often, they just sort of get into the routine of things and it's day in, day out. So I think that's a very good point. You got to stop and take a minute, assess where you're at. And I think that's exactly what you did, and look at where you are now, right? Taking a minute.
And it's the comparison of time. Like, I think sometimes people, they don't want to change careers, or they don't want to start a business, or they don't want to do whatever it is, because they know that it's going to take some time before that thing's working properly, or before they get back to the same pay grade, for example. But to me, when you consider, well, are you going to be doing this thing for the next, are you happy doing this thing for the next 20 years, 30 years, 40 years in your career, versus taking a couple of years now to reset yourself onto a path that you really want to be on? That is an absolute no-brainer for me, is considering that the long-term, the long years, I guess, hopefully, that we all have in front of us.
For sure. Yeah, I went through the exact same thing when I was deciding between leaving teaching and getting into this job where, I'd get to do things like this. What I told myself was, if I do this, then I'm going to be climbing a ladder that I actually want to climb. So yes. I think that's the key. Got to switch it up if you
it's
feel
so that. True. Yeah. Be on the right ladder. Don't get to the top of the ladder and then realize you're leaning against the wrong building, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right. So I just wanted to give out one more reminder. I've only got about 3 more questions for Eleanor before we jump into the Q&A session. So I've already got some questions coming in. So if you have any questions, again, please head over to the Experience Series Facebook live stream and leave your comments in the section below. All right, so I wanted to talk to you about the book you wrote, 2 Million Revolutions. So what was the main message that you want to convey with that book?
The main message was that if somebody like me can go and cycle across Europe when I had zero clue whatsoever about what I was doing, that, it's pretty much, hopefully, would be a sign that anybody could do it. So I outlined in the beginning all of the blockers and all of the barriers, all those things that we spoke about, where every person you talk to thinks it's a terrible idea and is telling you not to go, as well as your own brain telling you at every single instance that it's a terrible thing and telling you not to go. And, and I guess and a lot of them, they're sort of like some of the entertaining stories, I guess, along the way, but it is, for lack of a better word, a lot of that journey was a bit of a shitstorm, I guess, is a word we would use in Australia. I don't know how often that word is used elsewhere.
I love that. I love that term.
But, going that a lot of things can go wrong, and, you're capable of figuring it out. And it's not about being totally ready at the start of the journey to embark on it. You only become the person who's able to cycle 3,000 kilometers across Europe by just waking up in the morning, and you eat your croissant, and then you get on the bike and you try and cycle for as long as you can. So I guess it's almost like a myth buster in a way, just going like, there's no magic bullet, there's no secret sauce. You've just got to put your ass on the bike and just try and ride.
Yeah. That's amazing. Just try and see if you can do it. And
exactly.
Damn, can you do it? Yeah, Amazing. All right. So I wanted to ask you, obviously, of course, besides the fact that you get to wear many different hats, what's the best part of your job now?
The best part of my job now, I think, is it's getting the opportunity, I think, to just have conversations like this. Mm-hmm. And it's getting the opportunity, I think, to be able to speak, particularly to young people as well at university, you know, people who are, you know, 17, 18, they're just getting out in the big wide world for the first time. And it's getting to spread to them the messages that I wish that people told me when I was at school. Right. Things that I still probably wish that people would say more aloud to me now. So I guess it's trying to make these messages that, you know, that you will never feel ready. Everything's a tiny little step at a time, one little step at a time. All of these things, I guess, that I've gotten to learn through adventure is being able to, you know, use that to help others, which was my original physiotherapy goal. And so really it's come full circle, just in a totally different expression, which is kind of nice.
That is more than kind of nice. I think that's amazing. Yeah. You got to have some wins for yourself, and now you're spreading what you've accomplished with others. And honestly, I think, again, I was saying, like, I love that I get to speak to people like you, because I often do walk away from these conversations going, damn, I really learned something from this. So thank you. And obviously, last but not least, I think many people are going to be wondering, do you plan on breaking any other world records if the opportunity presents itself? Do you have like anything? Maybe this time it's going to be like a mountain or something.
Yeah, like, look, yes, there will be another world record, I'm sure. And it's fascinating actually to be having this conversation now today. I was reading a book today called The Happiness Advantage by Sean Aker, and it had a section in it that was talking about the Guinness World Records. And that, you know, basically that it's always out of date because it's always getting superseded. That's why they have to release it every year. Our records are actually in the 2021 Guinness Book of Records. So if anybody's looking for a Christmas gift, our records happen to be in that one, not in an earlier one. But, you know, and then it spoke about the 4-minute mile, that for so long people believed that it wasn't possible to break the 4-minute mile. It just wasn't possible to run that fast. And as soon as the first guy did it, and then they publicized it more widely, all of a sudden there were all of these people who were able to run a 4-minute mile. And to me, ocean rowing is the same. So many world records are the same, that it's just going, hey, if somebody like me with 6 weeks notice can go and get in a boat and turn up and give it a go, not being very ready, I guess, in many aspects of it, you know, I'm not special, basically. I didn't get a world record because I was especially well trained or anything like that. And I would love for more people to be able to see world records in that sense of going, these people were able to do it, and they're actually just like me when you think of it. And, you know, that I'd love you to get a world record. I'd love everybody to get a world record, because it is actually possible.
Yeah. I think it's really cool to be able to say that you were part of a, you know, a world first, whatever it might be. Yeah. So amazing.
There's plenty of things out there up for grabs. So if anybody wants to chat about, you know, trying to get a world record, I'm happy to help you do that.
There you go. Thank you, Eleanor. Okay. So on to the Q&A questions. My colleague is sending them through right now. Okay, let's see.
Oh, very excited. What have people got in the pipeline?
Yeah. So, this question is, did you have a mantra or technique to deal with the mental fatigue of your journey?
Ooh, so not a mantra as such, but what I did have out there was, there were like 7 or 8 letters that I had that I opened at different, you know, markers across the journey. The most difficult day, I think, was day 12 or 13, when my seasickness was really bad. I was having a huge amount of pain and all sorts of things. And opening a letter from a really good friend of mine, a mentor of mine, was the thing that really got me through one of the super low moments. And those letters got me through other super low moments. So having that physical artifact, I guess, of people's love, and a reminder, I guess, of those people that are at home and their belief in me, perhaps, that was something that was really strong, and I would read them many times once I'd opened them. So that really helped.
Right. Oh, amazing. I didn't realize, sorry, I just wanted to ask, so you've had a mentor since what point did you kind of get into mentorship, or like when you got your own mentor?
So I went on a trip over to Silicon Valley and Boulder in Colorado at the beginning of 2017 when I opened the Innovation Hub. And the leader of that, Aaron Birkby, a friend of mine, so he was the CEO of Startup Catalyst. And I'd gotten back from that trip. It was a few months in, and I was just really struggling in the business. And I reached out to him and said, Aaron, would you mentor me? And luckily for me, he said yes, and he has been really pivotal in so many aspects of my thinking in terms of, you know, all of the things that I've learned. He's been a really important person. So,
that's so cool.
yeah, it kind of came out kind of organically, but I pursued him a little bit to get him on board, I guess you could say.
Amazing. A pretty good decision if he helped you get through that journey. So amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So I think this one's a little bit, it's a general one, but do you have any tips for people who want to become more active and more adventurous?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, fantastic question. So I think, you know, what is adventurous for you? What's adventurous for me? It's going to be a little bit different. So I think it's just choosing something that feels a tiny little bit about outside your comfort zone and then choosing to do that. It could be skating 100 meters down the street. It could be going indoor rock climbing, you know, something like that. But choose an activity I think that you have some kind of natural, a little bit of attraction to, but also maybe a slight little bit of fear. Yeah. And I think just commit to doing one session, to trying it once. And I think that would be is the most epic way to start. It's just that one little thing.
Right. Yeah. So, this one, I like this one. I actually wanted to ask you this one myself. What was the most beautiful thing you saw when you were rowing across the ocean?
Oh, so many things. But if I have to only pick one, it is the water and the sunsets and the sky. Because the thing that is incredible about seeing a sunset at sea, especially when you're in a really low boat, is you're surrounded 360 degrees by water and sky. And then when it picks up the color, and, you know, everything turns pink and gold and silver and it's shimmering, and it's like you're encapsulated inside a sunset. And I have never seen anything like it. And I wish if there's one thing I could get everybody to see, it would be that moment, or those moments in the ocean when you're surrounded by color 100%. It is mind blowing.
Damn. You know what? I was thinking that, like, it would just look like a globe of sunset that you're stuck in.
It
like,
does.
Amazing. That's so cool.
It's out of this world. And there's like, you know, there's colors that I saw out there that I'd never seen before in my life that I almost just don't even have words to describe. So we've tried to capture it in photos and things, but it's just not possible.
Yeah, no, the best things in life, you got to be there to experience them. So exactly. If anything, there's your motivation to go out and try something like Eleanor, right?
Go get in the middle of the ocean. Absolutely.
Okay. So I think, this one's very direct. What was the worst part?
Oh, the worst part was definitely the seasickness. So I was seasick for the first 17 days. So just basically imagine having like the worst vomiting bug of your life. So, you know, vomiting every 10, 15 minutes, and you're still rowing for a full 3 hours. So you go and vomit over the side, you come back, you keep rowing, and just having to have that level of physical exertion when you just can't keep any food down and you feel so ill and you're so tired, and having to wake up in the middle of the night. So I had a 2:30 a.m. to 5:30 a.m. shift, and that alarm going off at like 2:15 was the worst thing in the world. Because it's the last thing you want to do is get out in the middle of the night and go and row.
Yeah. Oh God, I can imagine. I mean, I hate my alarm, so I can only picture what yours would have been like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's all we have for the Q&A questions, but I actually wanted to ask you just this, it's a silly question, but when you got off the boat, you know that feeling where you're of course you do, that feeling when you get off the boat and you're on land, but it still feels like you're on the ocean. How long did you have that sort of swaying feeling for?
So it was about 3 days, and they said to us when we got off the boat, they're like, you know, take somebody with you when you go to the bathroom, like hold on to somebody because you might fall over. And I was walking along with my friend Ash, and Meg was just in front of us. And we're like, oh, Meg, do you want somebody to walk with you? And she's like, no, I'm fine. And then as she turned around telling us that she was fine, she like fell over onto a table of condiments, like full of like ketchup and mustard. It was so funny. So it's like, you know, you can't orchestrate that, but for days afterwards, like if I turned quickly on the spot, like I would hit walls and all sorts of things. So yeah, it took a lot.
Crazy. Sorry, I had to ask that because again, I'm just like trying to put myself into what it would have been like for you before, during, and after. So that was one that was on my mind.
And if you do want to see it as well, we do have a documentary called Why Row an Ocean, which is on YouTube and it's freely available for people to watch. So yeah,
Amazing.
If you want to get more of an insight, people can jump over to YouTube and check that out too.
Perfect. So. Okay. Could you actually repeat the title again so that people can actually go?
Why row an ocean?
Why row an
ocean? A question which perhaps remains unanswered. But
I'd say we covered the reasons pretty well.
Am I selling it yet or not really?
Oh, definitely. I don't know if I've got it in me, but I mean, like you said, you never know until you try, right?
So, exactly. I believe in you. I think you do have it in you.
Thank you. I feel like I would be more of like a mountain climber, but God, I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Hey, whatever floats your boat, right?
Exactly. All right. So thank you so much, Eleanor. It's been such a treat being able to talk to you. I've had genuinely such a great time speaking to you and hearing about your experience. For those of you tuning in at home, make sure to check out eleanorcarey.com to keep up with everything that she's going to be accomplishing, which I'm sure is going to be great things. And yeah, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow the Experience series on Facebook. Once again, I am Shailene. Eleanor, thank you. I hope you had a good time as well.
Thank you so much for having me. I've had a phenomenal time. And yeah, thank you for everybody who's watching as well. So yeah, thanks for spending the time with me. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.